Welcome to this video on factoring by grouping. By the end of this video, you should be able to rewrite a 4-term polynomial using the grouping method to factor. When you have a polynomial with 4 terms, sometimes all of the terms don't have all the same, for example, variables or common factors. But 4 is so long, we're able to break it down into 2 smaller GCF problems to work with. So let's take a look. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to split into 2 groups. So between the second term and the sign of the third term, we're going to split. So split into 2 groups. That's the grouping part. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to find the GCF for each group individually. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's look at the GCFs of each group. So I'm only going to look at the left-hand group right now, so I'm going to cover up the right-hand group and just treat this as a GCF problem. So when I look at 3x squared and xy, they do not have a coefficient in common. 3 does not go to 1, okay? But they do have x's in common. They have a single x in common. So that's going to be my GCF of this last side. So I'm going to have my x as my GCF, just like we did previously. 3x squared divided by x leaves me with 3x. And then negative xy divided by x. Those x's are going to cancel, leaving just the y. Now that we're done with the left-hand side, let's cover that up and let's only look at the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, this leading coefficient is positive, so that means whatever I'm going to divide by is going to be a positive number, so I'm going to bring that positive down. 12 and 4, 4 goes into 12 and 4 goes into itself, so they have a 4 in common. They do not have any variables in common, just the 4, so I'm going to put plus 4 right there. Okay. Open up and I'm going to put whatever's left over. 12x divided by 4 leaves me with 3x. Negative 4y divided by 4 leaves me with negative y because the 4's cancel out. So when I look at the whole thing together, at this point, this and this should match. If these are matching, you've correctly factored. Okay? So we found the factors for each group. Our final step is take out the GCF and write in factored form. So I am left with a binomial here. This is one term, this is the second term. They have a GCF f of 3x minus y. They both have that. So if I divide it off, 3x minus y, from each of these, my GCF is 3x minus y. This would cancel, and that would cancel, leaving x plus 4 for the second parenthesis. So the GCF is 3x minus y, and what was left over when we took that out was x plus 4. This is the final factored form. When you do have a binomial that you ended up taking out for GCF, you do have to put it in parentheses. That's indicating everything in this parenthesis multiplies to everything in that parenthesis. And we could check our work that way. So let's try it again. 4 terms, split them between the second term and the sign of the third term. And then we look at each side individually. So let's look at our left side. The greatest common factor that they have in common is a 5. They both have b's, and the smallest of those is b squared. So my GCF on the left is 5b squared. I need to write down what's left over when I factor that out. 20b cubed divided by 5b squared becomes 4b. 15b squared divided by 5b squared is 3. So I've factored the left. Now we're going to go over and we're going to do the right. Okay, I need to bring down the plus sign. 8 and 6 share a 2 in common. There's no variables in common. This one has a b, but the other term does not, so that's not going to count. Okay, so we have a positive 2 that we're dividing out. 8b divided by 2 gives us 4b. 6 divided by 2 gives us a positive 3. And when I look at it all the way together, I have 4b plus 3 and 4b plus 3. 4b plus 3 is in both terms. That is my GCF. So when I pull it out, it's like canceling these off like we divided up here. And what's left over is 5b squared plus 2. 5b squared plus 2. We could check our work by redistributing and combining our like terms. So anytime there's 4 terms, that's too many to work with. We want to see if we can factor by grouping. We'll split them in half. So we'll split this in half, and we'll look only at the left half first. 18 and 24 have a 6 in common. R cubed, R squared is the smaller variable, so we're going to use R squared. So our GCF on the left is 6r squared. When I divide it out, 24 divided by 6 is 4. R cubed divided by R squared leaves an R behind. Negative 18 divided by 6 gives you negative 3. R squared divided by R squared cancels out. Okay, that's the left-hand side. Now we're going to go over here to the right-hand side. The first term is positive, so you're going to bring down your positive sign. Okay, 4r and negative 3, they don't have any number in common other than 1. So I'm going to bring a positive 1 down, so nothing's going to change. 4r minus 3 is what's left over when I take out a 1. And when I look, my 2 parentheses match, so my GCF is 4r minus 3. And what's left over for the other parenthesis is 6r squared plus 1. Okay, we'll do one more of these. Let's do this one. So let's split them in half and look at just the left-hand side. Okay, we get a 4 in common. And the most k's we can have is 2, because that's the smaller exponent. So my GCF on the left is 4k squared. When I divide it out, 32 divided by 4 is 8. K cubed divided by k squared. Remember, you're subtracting your exponents, leaving just a k. Then I have plus 4k squared divided by 4k squared is just 1. Let's go over and look at the right-hand side. We have a plus sign right there, so we bring the plus sign down. 24 and 3 have a 3 in common. So I bring my GCF down. 24 divided by 3 is 8. The k does not cancel, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. 8k plus 1, 8k plus 1. So that's my GCF. When I remove it, these would be canceled out, leaving what's behind 4k squared plus 3. Alright, so notice we had different signs. You always got to pay attention to the sign, but there's a special time when you really have to pay attention to the sign. So let's try these down here. I have my 4 terms, and I'm going to split it. When the coefficient, when you're just looking at one side, if that's a negative, you have to take out a negative number. So we're going to want to be really careful of that. We can go ahead and do that side first. So because 56 is negative, so looking, I know that 21 does not go into 56 evenly. So I need to come up with a factor that multiplies into 21, but also into 56. Okay, so when I'm looking, the next smallest factor I can think of is 7, and 7 does go into 56. And remember, I said it had to be negative because the sign on the leading coefficient when you're looking at just the half is negative. Okay, so I have negative 7, and when I divide it out, negative 56 divided by negative 7 gives me a positive 8, and the a has nothing to cancel with. Negative 21 divided by negative 7 gives me a positive 3. Okay, so that's the right-hand side. Let's go look at the left-hand side. The left-hand side starts with a positive, so we're okay there. We can divide by a positive number. 8 and 3 have nothing in common. There's nothing that you can multiply to get 3 that you can also multiply to get to 8. So the only thing they have in common is the a, and it's only an a to the first because that's the smallest power. So a, and if I take that out, I'm dividing it, I end up with 8a squared plus 3. And when I pull this away so I can see both sides at the same time, alright, sorry about that. I'm just noticing that we had an a missing. So this should really be a squared, which makes this a squared, which takes that away here. And how I noticed that that was missed is our parentheses didn't match. We had 8a plus 3 here and 8a squared plus 3 here. There's supposed to be a 2 on this a, so it would be 3, 2, 1, no a's. So our 8a plus 3 and our 8a plus 3 match. That's our GCF. And what was left behind was a squared minus 7. Let's try that again. When I split in half between the second and third terms, that makes the second term, the leading coefficient, be negative. So that means I need to divide by a negative number. 15 and 21 have a 3 in common, and it has to be a negative 3. So I'm going to divide out a negative 3. What's left over is negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5, and the a had nothing to cancel with. 21 divided by negative 3 is negative 7. So see, it doesn't matter if we started on the left or on the right. Now I'm going to come back over here to the left. 56 and 40 have an 8 in common. A squared is the smallest variable they share in common, so their GCF is 8a squared. When I divide, 40 divided by 8 gives me 5a cubed divided by a squared, leaves an a. Negative 56 divided by 8 is negative 7, and the a squareds cancel. So when I look, I have two 5a's minus 7. That's my GCF. When I remove them, what's left over is 8a squared minus 3. Alright, we'll try one more. We'll use the bigger numbers so we keep getting easier to practice with some bigger numbers. I'm going to divide between the second term and the third term side. Doesn't matter which side we do first. 24 and 18 share a 6 in common. R squared is the smaller of the variable, so my GCF is 6r squared. 24 divided by 6 is 4. R cubed divided by r squared is just r. Negative 18 divided by 6 is negative 3, and my r squareds cancel. So that's my left. I'm going to cover this so I'm only looking at the right. Notice that that sign is positive. That means we divide by a positive number. So I'm going to put a plus here. 4 and 3 have no factors in common. When that happens, they share a 1. 1 times 4, 1 times 3. That's the biggest number they have in common. So that's what we're going to divide out, which doesn't change anything because we're dividing by 1. We have 4r minus 3 times 4r minus 3. That is my GCF, and what is left over after these are canceled out is 6r squared plus 1. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. See you in class.